Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. Okay. Well, hello. Thank you so much for joining us tonight with Conversation with the Mountaineer Parents Club. My name is Lisa Hanselman. I'm the director of the Mountaineer Parents Club, and we are very excited to have all of you with us this evening. Tonight, we're going to talk to you just a little bit about what to expect and what we offer here at WVU in terms of mental health support. So before we really get to everything, I would like to have our first panelist here, Morgan, introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan Sharpless. I'm our assistant director here at the Counseling Center at WVU.
We also have our tech support tonight, who's available should we need anything. You can always reach out in the chat and let her know if you're having any issues. Okay, and with that, we'll get started. What to expect. So, as I mentioned, my name is Lisa Hanselman, and while I am the director of the Mountaineer Parents Club, I'm also the mom of 3 boys, including 2 who are of college age. So, kind of been through some of this with you all, same as you all are here. So, here we are. Break is here, and there's a lot happening. You have your students home in just a few days, and you're more than likely going to have a pretty good picture of how you'd like this first break. If it's your freshman coming home, you'd like this break to go. Now, it's probably not going to go exactly like you think. Expectation versus reality is always a problem for families, especially moms. I'm a mom. I'm forever assuming how I think things are going to go, and it just never quite goes like I want. So when you are thinking about your student coming home, you're probably thinking about all the family fun you're going to have, and chats and movie nights and all of these funny things. Lots of dinners, lots of togetherness. But the reality is probably a little bit different. Students typically come straight home. They want to borrow the car. They want to hang out with their friends that they haven't seen in several weeks or months. They sleep a lot those first couple of days. They probably sleep more than you realize. They stay out late. Their days begin when most of us are ending our days. And they're out of the house a lot more than you'd like them to be. But that's okay. It's fine. It's because they've changed a little bit. They've changed and grown, and it'll be fun for you all to see. So expect a lot of changes, but you know, in the reality of all of this is that they're really the same person. They've just grown up a little bit. So next, I just wanted to say that some of the other changes, meal times, habits, they eat at way different times than probably you and your family do. They might eat different things. Your student could have changed their diet. Maybe they're keto, maybe they've become a vegetarian. Hard to tell at this point, but all of that is pretty ordinary. They're just stretching out a little bit, spreading their wings and learning a few new things. They'll probably all have some new ideas, some new thoughts, some new likes and dislikes. I know that when I think of my children, sometimes I think of them all as perpetually about 12 to 14 years old. And I will often call them and say, I'm making your favorite meal. But it isn't their favorite meal anymore because they grew up, and I kind of miss that. And I maybe still wish they were 14 years old. But what we're going to have too is vocabulary. I say that in a nice way, but really code for they might now have a lot more curse words in their vocabulary. They might throw in a lot of other phrases, slang and things like that. It's all in good fun, honestly. It's just one more way that your student is growing up and becoming a little closer on that path to being an adult. And they're a lot more fun. They really are. It's hard for us as parents, but they become a lot more fun. One of the things I always say is that my sons aren't great communicators, as some boys are not. And when I do get text messages back from them, if they do respond, I always know what's up with my oldest, because he will say, "Thanks, pal." Well, I don't think we're pals. I thought we were closer. I thought even he'd tell me he loved me once in a while. He doesn't, but pal is his way of saying that. So a lot of that is going to happen with you and your students. Things will be different, but deep down, they really are just the same kids. And then lastly, time to set some house rules. You're going to have a curfew. Students aren't used to a curfew. They have been making their own decisions all this time. So if you need a curfew and that is important in your household, set those expectations right away. Maybe there are some non-negotiables. Maybe you need to know that they are going to be there for a specific night during the week, aside from Thanksgiving meal. Maybe grandma's coming to visit and they have to be there for that. And maybe some of the other things you planned out, it's okay, you can slide on those a little bit, but have a conversation with your student as soon as you can. And really compromise. It's hard for us as parents sometimes to do that, but best way to start treating your student like the adult they're becoming is to compromise and have those really great conversations. It will work out, I promise. And I know that all of you are so anxious to have your students and give them a big hug when they walk in. So that's all I wanted to say about that. But next up, Morgan is going to talk more about the Carruth Center for Counseling and all that we offer here at WVU.
Thanks, Lisa. And I'm going to tie in some of the things that Lisa said too, when, kind of talking about mental health and your student transitioning home for break. So first, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what we're seeing at the Carruth Center. This is probably one of the top questions that we get is, who comes into the Carruth Center? What do you guys do? Services, things like that. But also, what are students presenting with? So right now we're seeing students who are definitely impacted by the pandemic, just as like you and I and everybody on this call is, right? Students have been navigating uncertainty. They were last year, if they were in high school, right? They were maybe some in person or all online, or some online, some in person. And, same thing last year with our classes at WVU. So they've been managing this uncertainty for quite some time now. And along with that uncertainty really has been lack of routine. And so I'm seeing a lot of students coming in really struggling with time management, which is a pretty typical concern anyway for college students, whether it's your first year, second year, sometimes even third year, right? It takes some time to be able to figure out that time management aspect. But really, I think the pandemic has impacted, students' ability to kind of create and get into a routine. I mentioned some of those academic adjustments, right? Where there's normal adjustments from high school to college, right? The transition that, we experience of your classes are going to be quite harder, right? Classrooms are a lot bigger. There's more expectations. You have maybe more exams or assignments, and there's a lot of independence when it comes to, your academics in college compared to high school. And then adding in all of those transitions related to the impact from the pandemic. So the virtual to in-person and back and forth, and having to learn, how do I study for an online class? How do I pay attention to an online class, right? How do I stay organized? All of those adjustments are definitely impacting our students. And we're seeing that here at the Counseling Center. We're seeing more students with increased and persistent stress. About a little over 50% of the students that have been to the center this year have been telling us that they're really stressed. And I think about 87% of students that have been to the center have reported, pretty moderate to significant anxiety-related symptoms. And so those two aspects are pretty higher than they normally are in what we see. And again, I think those are in relation to the impact of the pandemic and how it's impacted our functioning. We see a lot of students struggling with loss of motivation and focus, and that really relates back to lack of routine, time management, and some of those academic adjustments that they have reported experiencing that I just mentioned. And so we're seeing a lot of these pieces. And so what we've been trying to do is help students manage these aspects of their life whenever they're struggling with them, through our counseling services and other resources on campus, which I'll kind of talk a little bit more later about everything that we do here at the center. And so we're seeing students that are incredibly, incredibly stressed, right? And so as parents, I think what's important to know is, if there are healthy coping mechanisms and unhealthy coping mechanisms. And so how we cope and how we manage with stress really, really matters. On a pretty regular basis, the students that I see aren't really equipped with some of the skills on how to manage stress, right? Because maybe they haven't experienced it in the same way before, right? High school, if they're first year students, high school was pretty kind of like there was a routine to it, right? And so they woke up, they had their classes, and then they kind of came home at the same time every day. Maybe they were involved in sports or they had a job. There was kind of a pretty typical routine. And so there weren't that many curveballs that were kind of thrown at them for the most part. And so in college, there's a lot of curveballs that are thrown at you, right? Because there's so much more independence and there's so much more, to manage on their own. And so we see a lot of students really struggling with how to handle that stress. And so a lot of times we see students are using more alcohol, right, than they have before. Or, this is the big one that I see a lot is students saying, well, this is just part of life, right? Like learning to live with it and trying to, act like everything's fine whenever it's not fine. This piece actually contributes to way more stress and can lead to distress because, you're trying to manage when you're not really okay, right? The house is on fire around you and you're still trying to hang out, right, in that house and act like everything's fine, but it's really not. We see a lot of overuse with electronics, right? Turning to video games or social media or things like that as ways to kind of procrastinate or spending too much time, or even those things impacting sleep, right? We see students who are maybe not sure how to manage stress and are overeating, right? That's a really common concern. Another one that we've been seeing a lot lately is isolating. So students are, maybe not going to different events on campus, or they're not going to class because they feel so overwhelmed and they feel so stressed by the academic piece or just the different things that they might be experiencing in their day-to-day life. So there's that isolating and avoiding piece. And then I think one of the number one things that I see with students more often than not is they're overly critical of themselves. Students are their own worst enemies. They're harder on themselves than anyone else. And I think that's also true for just people in general, right? I think all of us can probably think about that and think about how critical we are of ourselves. And they set high expectations. And so then what happens with that is, whenever we have this like really hard judgment, it kind of drives stress up, right? And then we feel like we can't achieve those expectations that we set for ourselves. And so then we isolate, we avoid, right? We kind of do all these things that are not really going to help our stress. It's going to really increase our stress. So as parents, trying to reinforce how students can maybe cope in healthier ways. And so seeking support, right? Talking to their support systems. Maybe it's coming here to the counseling center, talking to their RA or friend or mentor, or somebody that they can be like, hey, I'm not okay. I'm having trouble with this. This is also a big thing I tell students is taking breaks, right? A lot of times I work with students who are like, I'm just so overwhelmed. I don't have enough time in my day to manage, all the things that I need to get done. And so then we end up looking at how they're managing their time, and it's usually pretty poorly, right? And so they think that taking breaks is not an option. But then when we look at, okay, how can we restructure this time and we reinforce taking breaks, then they feel less overwhelmed. Because if they're working on assignment when stress levels are through the roof, it's not going to be productive. They're going to feel frustrated. It's going to take probably an hour or 2 hours longer to get the assignment done because they're so stressed and so overwhelmed. And so if you incorporate taking breaks in there, right, and managing things a little bit differently, it can actually help bring those stress levels down. And then self-care is an important piece. A lot of times I hear from students, well, like, I don't have time for this, right? Again, if we look at how are you spending your time, I oftentimes will have students pull up on their phone, like how many hours, if you have an iPhone, how many hours you're spending on your phone, right? There's all those indicators that are on there now. And it usually blows students' mind that, oh my goodness, like I've been on my phone for 7 hours already today, or my average daily use time is like 5 or 6 hours. And so then we kind of break that down of like, okay, how is this happening, right? And where are you spending these times at? How can you use this time differently, right? And so being able to reinforce different ways to cope and manage. Setting boundaries. A lot of times, I'll hear students talk about the fear of missing out, right? That they'll say their friends are inviting them to, an event or somewhere, and they're afraid that if they don't go, they're going to miss out on something really fun. But maybe they have a homework assignment, or maybe they have a competing task or priority that they know is really important, but then they're afraid to miss out on. And so an important piece is to set boundaries. It's okay to say no sometimes. You don't have to say yes for everything, right? And again, if you manage your time well, right, maybe then you can spend more time doing things that you enjoy rather than kind of last minute assignments and things like that. And then, of course, using resources, which I'll talk about some of these resources in the next several slides. But one of the big perks about being at WVU and being at such a large campus is we have a resource literally for everything. And so being able to use those and knowing that they're there for a reason, and all of our resources that we have are free. I'm also a big reinforcer for diet, exercise, and sleep. So I always tell students, like, look, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not eating well, you're not going to feel well, right? Of course, you're not going to focus in class, right? Of course, you're going to be irritated or irritable or, all of these things. And so these aspects of taking care of yourself are going to really help your academic performance. And so thinking about, if your student kind of tells you that they've been struggling or things like that, ask them, okay, what are you doing to take care of yourself, right? How are you managing some of these stressors? Because how we cope really makes a huge difference in terms of how we feel. So these two pieces are my absolute favorite. And so I put these into every single presentation that I do. And I'll even show them to students because I have a 17-year-old at home, and anytime that his phone is on 30% battery, he's running around the house, freaking out, looking for a charger, looking for a mobile charger so he doesn't have to be stuck to a wall. And so he never lets his cell phone battery die, right? And I think it's pretty typical for that age group because they're so attached to their phones in so many ways. And so I always tell students, would you let your phone battery die? No, you really wouldn't. And so why are you doing that to yourself, right? So what are some things that you can do to recharge? You recharge your phone by plugging it into the wall, right? So how can you recharge yourself? What are things that you can do to help you get your battery kind of back up to full mode? And so those were some of the things I mentioned, like taking breaks, right? Setting boundaries, saying no, sleeping, eating, exercising. All of those things can help recharge and refuel to be able to go through and do all the tasks and responsibilities and everything that you need to tend to. So you might be thinking, okay, so this information is really helpful, right? But how do I know if my student's struggling, right? How do I know if my student could benefit from counseling services or resources here on campus? So all of this, we have we actually updated our website. And so we have a lot of really great info on our website. And so this is on there as well, kind of different signs and things to kind of watch out for, right? One of the things that I say quite often is, is there a change in their academic performance? If it's their first semester freshman year, there might be some changes from high school, right? And so if they were a 4.0 student in high school, they may not necessarily be getting a 4.0 their first semester of college, and that's pretty typical. But what I'm talking about here is a pretty significant decline. If there's something atypical that's happening compared to their previous semester or past performance. Is your student calling you, tearful all the time? Are they calling you multiple times a day, right? Is this normal than what you've experienced before? So you know your students, right? And so you know them well enough to know things that may be different and things to kind of watch out for. Are they constantly communicating to you that they're absolutely overwhelmed, that they're absolutely stressed, right? Are they telling you that they're having difficulty functioning, right? That they feel like they can't get out of bed or they can't make it to class or things like that because of how overwhelmed or stressed they are. And then two, noticing as a parent changes in weight, right? I think changes in weight when going to college is actually pretty normal because, Lisa was talking about, when they come home, their favorite foods may not necessarily be the same as what they were before, because when they're in college, they're just on a completely different routine. They're not eating, dinner at the same time or things like that. But what I'm talking about here is more significant changes. And so, if your student gained, a lot of weight or maybe lost a lot of weight, right? That could be an indicator that, hey, something might be going on, right? Changes in hygiene too. So if your student was pretty typically clean, then I think it's something that to pay attention to if they're not maybe showering, they're not bathing, or, maybe you notice that their hair is like unwashed, or they're not, taking care of their laundry, which sometimes can be normal. And I'm talking about in a more excessive way. And this important piece too is if your student communicates like, I don't want to be alive anymore, right? Or indicates that they're having thoughts of ending their life, right? That's a really big indicator that they're struggling or they might not be okay. Any kind of bizarre speech or behavior, kind of comments that doesn't really flow with the conversation that you're having, right? Doesn't necessarily match, or really rapid speech, any kind of unusual kind of patterns that you've seen that maybe weren't there before. Agitation or irritability or any kind of nervousness that the student, might indicate. And so maybe, you might offer a piece of advice, right? Or some input, and then they just kind of attack you. And they're on the attack, maybe yelling at you or, whatever, or maybe, they and their sibling or somebody else that, they kind of got into it again, which is pretty atypical for them. And this kind of goes up to the first piece too, dependency on family. So how often are they communicating with you? Is there an unusual amount of dependence that they're having that's abnormal than what it has been before? Are they calling you, 6, 7, 8 times a day, or constantly texting you, or things like that, or asking to go home, or different aspects where they're maybe not necessarily gaining that independence and that they're seeking that kind of support from you. And so these are all different examples of ways that your student might be struggling or showing that they're struggling. And so as a parent, when you notice some of these things, I think one of the most important pieces is to be able to talk about it, being supportive. As I mentioned, students are often their own worst critics. I can't tell you how many students that I work with that are so fearful of, their parents knowing how they're feeling, or knowing that they're struggling in college, or knowing that, maybe that they want to change their major. And so they put so much pressure on themselves to perform and to do well and, set these expectations or, have these kind of critical kind of based thoughts, then, it becomes overwhelming. So I think as a parent, it could be helpful to talk about, okay, hey, how are you, right? Like, how are you doing? How are your classes? And being able to normalize things too, like, okay, this semester may not necessarily be, what you had anticipated it to be, but how can you finish it off in a way that is still strong, right? And so having that conversation while also thinking about like what your expectations are of your students. And I know, sometimes as parents, we want our students to perform really well, but I also think it's important to keep in mind that, we're in this pandemic, right? And this pandemic has impacted all of us and our students, most importantly. One of the things I think about all the time is I couldn't imagine being in college right now, taking classes and dealing with the uncertainty and managing all these things within this pandemic. And so thinking about, okay, what are your expectations of them, and having a conversation, because so many students are really afraid of disappointing family, right? Because they're here and they're often here because of you and for you, right? And so I think it's important to communicate that directly with them and have those conversations. And, when you do notice things, like some of the things that I mentioned, on the previous slide, if you do notice those things, it's important to have direct conversations of saying, what, hey, I noticed these past couple of weeks, you've been calling me like 6, 7 times a day. That hasn't been normal. Is everything okay? I just want to check in with you. Because when you ask something like that, you're directly kind of calling out their behavior versus saying, is everything okay? Because I think we're pretty conditioned to answer that question of, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine, right? Like anytime somebody asks you, how are you doing? It's like, I'm fine, even though when you may not necessarily be fine, right? That's why I think it's important to be really direct about what it is that you observe. Again, normalizing their experience. College is really stressful, right? And so they're navigating life kind of, independent for the first time, especially if they're first year students, or even for upperclassmen, there's a lot that they're managing. They have expectations from, family, they have expectations of themselves, which is often pretty high. And then they also have their classes that they're navigating, trying to think about their future career paths, getting into majors, all of those things. And so one of the key pieces too is really encouraging your students to use the resources that we have here. And so let them know that, hey, like, I know things, you've been really stressed and, it sounds like that you're kind of overwhelmed with your classes. It may be helpful. I'd be happy to talk with you, but I also know as a parent, you may not want to talk to me. Have you thought about going to the counseling center, right? Encouraging them to get help, encouraging them to use, what we have here on campus. And so again, all the things that I just said is really fostering that resiliency. I shared with you all in the beginning is that a lot of times I see students who really struggle with managing that stress. They're not sure because they maybe haven't experienced it before and they don't know how to cope with it, right? Sometimes that feeling is really intense and overwhelmed. I'm sure you have probably felt that way in your life, right? And you think about how do you manage stress, right? And so I know, like, sometimes for me, like, whenever I'm really stressed, I'm like, okay, what am I doing right now? Like, how can I like manage this in a different way, right? And so we always have to kind of check in with it within ourselves. And so, having conversations with your student and being able to foster that sense of resiliency of, okay, so, when something didn't go right, in the past, how did you manage it, right? What's worked before. A lot of times we have the keys to unlock our own doors, but what happens is when we're in that kind of fight or fight mode, we're just kind of freaking out, right? We don't know how to do everything. We're catastrophizing. Everything is the worst. And so sometimes it's, as a parent, being able to break it down for them. Okay, what's worked? How can we handle this, right? How can we help you take care of yourself, right? Looking at those coping strategies, like how many hours are you studying? You're studying 4 hours in a row. Wow, that's not really going to be healthy. It's not going to be helpful. So how can you break things down? How many hours are you sleeping? How can we help you adjust some of those pieces? Again, everything always goes back to time management. I put a bunch of different links in there, and this is just a very small portion of some of the resources that we have here on campus. Of course, I put our counseling center info in there. We have a really cool website that just got launched this fall semester, and it has all the mental health resources that you can imagine. And so it's mentalhealth.wvu.edu, and it links to all the different pages on here as well. So there's, information for parents, there's information for students, there's self-help pieces, it links to our websites. There's just a lot of really great info on there. Another really great website is the studentsuccess.wvu.edu. I know we're gearing up towards the end of the semester, but it's something that students can use now or even into, starting in the spring semester is the student success coaching. And so we have free success coaching. Students can meet once a week, twice a week, once a month with a success coach that will help them with time management. It would help them with study skills, it would help them with kind of pieces that they may be struggling with. And again, free resource that students can access. They can just fill out a form online to request a coaching appointment. Through that website too, or the tutoring.wvu.edu website, students can access free tutoring services. And then some of the other websites on there are also different, really helpful resources as the student lingo. Those are all more educational kind of modules and different webinars about like student success, like how to prepare for finals, right? How to study for specific classes compared to other classes, how to prepare for going home for break, to managing, doing time management webinars are on there as well. And so there's lots of different resources that we have here on campus. So this is all just reinforcing all the things that Lisa already said. So it's a little bit repetitive, but it's really important to know that when your student comes home, it's an adjustment for them and you, right? You've been accustomed to them not being there, and then they've been accustomed to living independently, right? And so they're having to return home where there might be some rules, right? And there might be curfews, or there might be things that are just different for them. And so there could be some kind of push and pull, right? When it comes to like conversations that might happen. And so thinking about if this is the first time your student's transitioning home for break, thinking about, okay, what are the expectations? Just as Lisa was talking about. I think an important piece to remember is, this coming break is the fall recess right before finals. And so students are more than likely going to be stressed, right? They might tell you that they have homework and they might tell you that they have to study and they have to do all these things, which is probably very true. And so really helping them also reinforce those coping behaviors that I was mentioning earlier is that, yes, it's extremely important to study and prepare, but it's also important to take breaks and take care of yourself. So teaching them and helping them create that balance while they're at home. And so Lisa and I were kind of chatting about this presentation is, those small changes. We talked about a favorite food, right? I mentioned I have a teenager at home. Just recently, last week, his new favorite food is Panera bread. His whole life, I have never been able to get him to order a singular thing from there. But he's in a new relationship. And so that's what his girlfriend likes. And so that's his new favorite place to eat. And so there might be changes and things like that might come up. But it's part of that aspect of them developing, right? And them growing. This is a key piece and key part of time, for identity development for them. You can think about, your experience that you had at this time. Sometimes students too may want to return to campus early, especially if they live off campus. It has nothing to do with, them wanting to leave you or anything like that. It usually has everything to do with a lot of times finals, and two, like they may really great friends, right? And they just may want to hang out with their friends and see them and have some time before classes start where they can just kind of relax in Morgantown, because that may not always be the case because they're here when classes are. So just different things that I kind of add to what Lisa was saying earlier in the presentation. So I wanted to make sure that you all had our information. So I went through a bunch of different things, and I kind of wanted to hit this most important and kind of keep this at the end. And so we offer short-term counseling here at the Counseling Center. One of the biggest questions that we get to is, where are you located? So we are on the Evansdale campus. And so we are just adjacent to the Rec Center and the Towers PRT. And so students can just take the PRT to Towers and they can come into the door closest to the Rec Center, and we're up on the top floor. If students are driving, they can actually park in the lower lot, in the patient lot that has a gate, and we offer validated parking. And so from there, they would just come in through student health, and we're again up on the top floor. And so we have a really great website that we revamped this past summer. So we have a lot of resources and a lot of information, a lot of more detailed information about the services that we offer and everything that we do. One of the key things about our services is that we are available 24/7. So I was just telling Lisa before we were getting started is I'm actually on call. So I was letting her know that if I receive a call, I might have to hop off or anything like that. But we are staffed 24/7. So students can call our main phone number, the 304-293-4431, 24/7. And so, our building is closed and our services shut down at 5 o'clock. And then that phone number rings to our after hours emergency. And so students just need to press 1 and then they'll get our protocol services. And so our protocol services will answer the phone and contact us, if needed for emergency situations. A key piece that, is also added that was new for us this fall semester that we have been really excited about is we have online scheduling. And so we know not a lot of students or anyone, right, might like to call in to get scheduled. So students can actually go online through our website. There's a button just in the top right-hand corner to schedule. And so they're only able to schedule during our operational hours. So during 8:30, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5. It's just because our electronic medical record system is a little funky, and the way we have to kind of process things, we have to have staff here on site to do it. So students can go online during our business hours to schedule. And then we also have our crisis text line that you'll see like the little note there. Students in conjunction with our phone number can actually text. So they can just text WVU to 741-741. And that's a national line that doesn't go to our WVU staff, that goes to national crisis counselors who would respond. So some of our little bit of details about our services. is we have our urgent crisis clinic Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5. And what this is this is a walk-in clinic for any students who are experiencing an emergency or urgent needs. And so they can just walk into the center without an appointment, and they can meet with one of our counselors that are available. And so we have this every single day, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5. We offer groups and workshops. We have a variety of groups that we're offering. I think we have about 6 or 7 this semester. And then we also have ongoing workshops. And so right now we have our Anxiety 101 workshop. We have a mindfulness workshop. And then I'm going to be offering after break a stress management weekly workshop. And so those are all listed on our website, and students can access them by either going to our website or calling in or coming in for services. I mentioned that we do short-term counseling. And so it's a little bit different if your student maybe has had counseling before coming to college. And so what we do is we focus on more brief and kind of solution focus oriented counseling. And so we typically meet with students for a handful of appointments, primarily because all university counseling centers have to serve the entire student body. And so we try to get students in and connected, and we help them figure out, okay, what services make the most sense. And then we kind of point them in the right direction. And so that could be short-term counseling, that could be a group, that could be a workshop, that could be, getting connected to a community provider. It could be a multitude of things, or, getting them connected to other resources on campus. And so one of the things that we offer is care management. And so that piece is really important because we see so many students who have had prior counseling experience where short-term counseling may not be as beneficial. It might be more helpful for them to meet with the same person for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 sessions, or however many sessions that they need. And so we have care managers on staff that will help connect students to providers in the Morgantown area that will match kind of their clinical need. And so we help them navigate using their insurance, scheduling appointments, and things like that. And then our student assistance program is for students who might be struggling with alcohol or other drug-related use. And then also to students who are referred through student conduct or through residence life through an alcohol or drug-related infraction. And so they do a lot of psychoeducational workshops and groups. And then we have our outreach services. So we do a ton of outreaches. So I'm doing this here tonight. And then while I'm presenting to you all, one of our staff members is actually leading a Zumba class right downstairs from us this evening. So we're always doing different outreach events on campus. And we have a new event that we've been doing is called Let's Chat. And so students can actually talk to a counselor. We have it Mondays from 2 to 3 via Zoom, and then Tuesdays 3 to 5 in the Mountain Lair, where they can just walk in and talk to a counselor. No appointment needed or anything like that. So we have tried to reduce barriers as much as possible, so that way students can access mental health care in a variety of ways. And then I'll talk about Talkspace here, I think, on the next slide. Perfect. So Talkspace is a new service for us. You may have seen this in the parents' newsletters that have been sent out with a little bit more detail, but students can actually talk to a therapist through Talkspace. So it's not a WVU employee or not a WVU therapist. They're actually staffed through Talkspace. Every WVU student, no matter if they're here in Morgantown or if they're an online student, has access to meet with a Talkspace therapist for 2 appointments a month. And they also have access to text that therapist as well for an unlimited amount of text messages. And so it's all teletherapy. Students, I think we have about almost maybe 400 students that have used Talkspace this semester. So students are sharing with us that they really enjoy it, and it's been helpful because then there's more flexibility in scheduling where there's evening hours or weekend hours. And then plus they can meet with that same therapist for as long as we have that contract with Talkspace. So it's a little bit more than that short-term counseling than what we're able to offer. So again, all WVU students have access to Talkspace. There are 2 free appointments per month for as long as we have that contract. It's another great way where students can access free mental health care, and another way that we try to reduce barriers for students to be able to access services in any way. And then the last piece is brand new to us. So WVU Medicine has actually created a clinic in our building. So they're the floor below us, called Healthy Minds University. And so Healthy Minds University provides more comprehensive care. They have psychiatry and medication management. And so here at the Carruth Center, we do not have psychiatrists, we only have therapists. But the Healthy Minds University is able to offer longer term therapy services. And so students are able to meet with a therapist while also being able to meet with a psychiatrist within one clinic in one location, which is what we know in terms of mental health services is the best possible way to receive care. And so we work really closely with the Healthy Minds University staff. And so we coordinate care and we help students get connected to more longer term or more comprehensive care. So we assist them with that process, as well as we work really closely with student health. And so we've tried to remove every barrier in every way to make sure students have the best possible care that they need and the best possible care that they would like. And so student health can refer students to Healthy Minds University, or we can as well. Or if you know your student maybe has had psychiatry in the past and you're wanting them to get transitioned to a provider here in Morgantown, or you know that they've had long-term therapy before, and you want to help them get connected to a provider here, Healthy Minds is a great option, and it's just the floor below us. And so it's right here on campus, and it's within the WVU medicine system. And so if this is something that you're interested in for your student, the student themselves can call the 304-598-4212 number to get connected. And so I just wanted to make sure that you all had information about all of our upcoming events. And so we do a lot more than just counseling at the Counseling Center. We partner with a lot of different units here on campus to do different workshops or seminars or things like that. And so these are things that we have coming up. I mentioned the Zumba class is actually going on right downstairs. There's our Anxiety 101 workshop, and then the Let's Chat that I mentioned. And one of the really cool and big events that's happening here soon is Chill Fest, and that's through Well WVU, and that's going to be on December 5th from 5 to 9. And so this is a great place to send your student for some self-care. If they report to you that they're really struggling or they're stressed about finals, they're going to have free yoga, acupuncture, massage therapy. They're going to be doing stress balls, meditation, snacks, therapy dogs, like all the stuff will be over at the rec center. And so we're really excited. We're partnering with them. And so we're going to be there. The Counseling Center is going to be there as well. And so if you do have questions or you want to learn more about events that are coming up, we do have social media accounts. So feel free to follow us on Instagram or Twitter. And then we have a new Facebook account. And so that's our new Facebook account. If you had followed us before, you'd want to follow the new account. And if you have any questions or information, our website has a plethora of information. You can always call our main phone number, the 293-4431. I get calls from parents almost every single day asking about services, and I'm worried about my student and I want to help them get connected, but I'm not sure exactly what to say. And so we can have those conversations with you about how to encourage your student to come to the Counseling Center. We can help you manage and navigate whatever it is that your student may need, or any questions that you may have on how to handle anything that comes up.
Okay, well, thank you, Morgan. So now up, time for the Q&A. So if anybody has questions for Morgan, please put them in the chat right now, and we'll be happy to take your questions. We'd even be happy if you'd like to unmute, turn your camera on and ask the question in person, that's fine too. But we'll be happy to go through anything now. We'll just wait a second and see if anything pops up in the chat. In the meantime, I do just want to remind you all that the Mountaineer Parents Club is always available. If you have anything that you need, a question, if you forget some of this information and just want Morgan's contact info, you can always reach out to us at any point. We're happy to help you with that and to answer all of your questions. So, anybody have a question for Morgan or something else that maybe she talked about that you'd like a little clarification on today? Just let us know. Well, we do have 2 thank yous in the chat, and I appreciate that very much.
Yes.
We really hope that the different events that we bring forward to our parents are helpful and that you're getting a lot of good information about what WVU offers. So I do appreciate that. Is there anything else we can help you all with? We'll give you another minute to put a question in, but in the meantime, as you can see, our fabulous tech support has put up our last slide here with a lot more of our contact info. So you can reach out to the Mountaineer Parents Club at any point. You can see our email address up there, parentsclub@mail.wvu.edu. You can reach us through our Facebook page, the official families, the WVU students. If you're not yet on that Facebook page, check it out. It's really where parents can just get information from other parents, but we do monitor it and just make sure everything is answered correctly. You can call us 800-WVU-0096. That's answered by our colleague, Katie Gallagher. She's more than happy to answer those questions for you. And check out our website for anything. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Well, I hope that means that we've shared all of the information that you need and that you feel like you've learned a lot from us tonight. So thank you. Moving forward, we'll be continuing different conversations and other virtual events throughout this semester and next. So do check us out. And if you have not yet joined the Parents Club and you're not getting our emails twice a month, please do. Send out lots of information that we get from Morgan and lots of other WVU units. And we just want you to have all of the information to stay connected to your student. And so I guess we'll say goodnight and thank you.